What does the Bible tell us about national policy? Well, it tells us that there's a purpose for government. Government is to help families. Government is an extension of family. You don't need government unless you have too many families, and then the families need government to help them make it all work. But what does the Bible tell us about how many immigrants to let in? Nothing. So that falls to government, to economics, to history, to wisdom. Here's a great verse for that kind of wisdom that's needed. Matthew 10:16. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Some people want to be nothing but as innocent as doves. We're also supposed to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. This one's about immigration, and there's a road we want to be on, and there's a ditch over here, we don't want to fall into it. And there's another ditch over there, we don't want to fall into it. So, welcome to Grounded, a podcast for restoring the church to a biblical foundation. And that is our topic for today, a biblical foundation for our thinking about immigration. So, let's start here. What does the Bible teach? Genesis 1:27, every immigrant you will ever meet is made in the image of God. So you want to have that deeply impressed upon your soul. Every immigrant you'll ever meet is made in the image of God, because every human you'll ever meet is made in the image of God. And because of that, there are implications of that. They're worthy of your love and your respect and even your help, as we'll see in some of the texts we're going to look at. So you meet an immigrant somewhere, new family moves in next door, and they're from somewhere else. You go to the store and you get to talk to somebody. If you do that, I do that. And they're an immigrant. You find out where they're from. And what do you know about them? I immediately know that this person is worthy of my love and respect. I grant them dignity because they, like we are made in the image of God. They are image bearers. So one ditch we don't want to fall into is to start getting an attitude toward immigrants. Those people. Treat them as less than human. Develop an attitude toward them. Build up some animosity toward those people. Now, we want to love them, show them mercy, show them respect, give them dignity. Don't fall into the ditch of a bad attitude toward immigrants. I know some of them coming across our borders are criminals. I know there are MS-13 guys. Even then, don't forget, that guy, as depraved as he is, as much as he's marred the image of God, it's still there, and he's worthy of respect as a human being. Furthermore, let's move on. In the Bible, God commands us to love immigrants who are actually in our country and to treat them well. I'm going to Leviticus chapter 9, and here's what it says. When a stranger resides with you in your land, so all right, they're from somewhere else, but they're here now. They're in our country. For us, here they are in the USA. They reside with you in your land. You shall not wrong him. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Leviticus 19:33 through 34, a key text. So what's it tell you? Well, there you are. And a family from someplace else moves in next door. Different culture, different dress, different music, different clothing, different foods, different everything. What do you know? They are made in the image of God. I shall not wrong them. I'll treat them like I treat any other citizen. I'll love them as myself because the Lord my God commands me to do this. So I'm going to love them and not do them wrong. I'm going to treat them well. Here's another key text. Covers a different category of people. Deuteronomy 10:17 to 19. And instead of immigrants, it talks about sojourners. They are a different category. The sojourner was somebody who came to stay for a while. We might liken it to somebody who gets a green card, which gives them 2 years. So they're just going to be here for a while. Maybe they'll make it to citizenship, maybe not. But they're here temporarily. Deuteronomy 10:17 to 19. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who is not partial and takes no bribe. He executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the sojourner, giving him food and clothing. Love the sojourner, therefore, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. So this is a little bit different category. This is a green card person. This is a temporary person, but this is a key Old Testament text about it. There are sojourners, different term. Love them And it even goes so far as to say, supply their need, treat them justly, like God, who's not partial and takes no bribe. Love the sojourner. So there are lots more texts, mainly in the Old Testament, about immigrants and about sojourners, but they all say about the same thing. So the sum of them is, there's a sojourner, there's an immigrant, they're in your country. What are you supposed to do? Treat them well and love them. So they move in next door, love them. They move in next door, treat them well. Welcome them to the neighborhood. Bake a cake, take it over there. We're so glad you're here. Tell us all about yourselves, blah, blah, blah. And you can do that for gospel purposes too. But anyway, treat them well and love them. All right, so you don't want to fall into the ditch of getting some attitude about immigrants. By the way, I am the son of an immigrant. So there. My father is born and raised in England. You say, well, that's England. He came from England. That's different. No, I'm an immigrant son. And he and his whole family moved to Gettysburg before I was born. Then he met my mother, and then they got married. Then my sister was born, then I was born. I'm the son of an immigrant. So I've got like a special reason, a personal reason to say, yeah, treat immigrants well. My dad was one. He became a citizen. So that's one ditch we don't want to fall in. Now there's a second ditch. What about borders? I guess you're hearing something in the news, unless you're living under a rock, you're hearing there are issues about the border in the United States. What about borders? I think there's a second ditch here we don't want to fall into either. How many people should we allow across our borders? There are Christians, and this is why we're talking about this. There are Christians, some of them at leadership levels, who say because of mercy, we should allow them all in. For the gospel, we should allow them all in. Because of love, we should allow them all in. There are some who are saying this is a gospel issue. By the way, almost always when somebody says to you this is a gospel issue, they're about to cram something down your throat. They're about to shovel poo from a large animal right down your throat. They're about to manipulate you. They might be a person who has empathy on steroids, but they want to bamboozle you. Whoa, it's our gospel issue. That almost always means they're about to say something that probably isn't true. But what about our borders? How many should we allow through? What should a Christian think about this? And the answer is the Bible is silent on that. Except the Bible urges us to get wisdom, and wisdom's going to be what we need to know how to resolve that one. But the Bible doesn't tell us. When the Bible says love the immigrant, that doesn't mean let them all in. That means the one who got in, the one who's there, the one who's in your land, love that person. There might be a whole bunch of others who want to get in your land and aren't going to be allowed to. Love doesn't mean you have to let them in too. Mercy doesn't mean you have to let them in too. Mercy might feel, the heartstrings are being pulled, being tugged by the plight that they're in. But hey, a nation can't let the rest of the world in. There have to be some limits, and we'll talk more about that later. But the Bible is silent and doesn't tell us how many people we can let in. So we have to recognize this is a political issue. It calls for political wisdom. But there is some help here, and we're going to do a little bit of biblical political theory. So here's one little brief leg of that travel down the biblical political theory route. You know, don't you, that the Bible justifies borders. There are borders in the Bible. There are even walls. Jerusalem had a wall. There was a big wall around Jerusalem. What was the wall for? Keep people out, keep people in, keep bad guys at bay in times of war. There was a wall. That limits, borders and walls are for defining and controlling who's in and who's out. Furthermore, a little more biblical political theory, families have borders, walls and doors and keys, and control who they let in. And government, I want to make this point now, is a servant of family. Government is a servant of family. So what is the basic building block of society? Is it government? No, it's not government. It's family. Family is the basic building block of society. Family is the basic building block of nations. In our day, actually, it's become more the individual. As a nation, we treat the individual as the basic unit. But it's been forever the family. At what point then does a family need a government. Let's go back to the garden. Let's go back to Adam and Eve. There's only two people on the planet, Adam and Eve. Do they need a national government? Well, I think not. Their marriage is in big trouble if they need government. There's only two of them there. They are family. They are the basic unit. That's what God started with, the basic building block of society, and they didn't need government. So when did the human race need government? Well, they had kids, and their kids had kids, and they had kids, and there were 50 people, then 100, then 200, then 1,000, and more and more and more. And somewhere in there, and I don't know when in there, so don't ask me, somewhere in there, it became difficult to manage the affairs of all these people, and they realized we're going to need a form of government. We're going to have to appoint some leaders. We're going to have to appoint some people. See Moses and Jethro in Exodus chapter 18. Moses, you can't do this alone. He was government. You need a bigger government. You need some other people. So what I'm trying to say here is this. Government is a servant of family. Family is what God made the basic building block of all culture. Family is the basic building block of every nation. And government serves the needs of family. When do you need a government? When our families can't handle their interactions anymore because there's too many families, now we need some government to help manage the whole thing. Government serves the needs of family. Government is there to help and serve and support and encourage. Oh, that we had a government that would encourage family. Government's needed when there are so many families they can't manage their own affairs and they need to appoint some representatives. So, in thinking about borders, we should think about families and their borders. So here's a question. Is it right for a family to have borders? Yes, it is. The Bible, I'm not going to prove this, the Bible clearly establishes the right of private property. There's no Marxism in the Bible. The right of private property is clearly established. So you live in an apartment, you live in a home, you have walls, you have a door, you have locks, you have a key, you have keys, you have borders. You let some people in, you keep other people out. The Bible establishes your right to do this. The Bible establishes the right to private property. So there you are in your private property. Now here's a question. Is it right for you to govern who gets in? Is it right for families to govern, to limit who gets in? Say, there you are in your apartment, then you look outside, and there are 100 people standing in the street outside your home, and they need a home, and they want to move in, and they knock on your door and say, can we move in? What do? Do you let them all in? Does love say, well, there's 100 of them. We'll find room somehow. We'll let them all in. Does mercy demand it? Is this a gospel issue? Well, for the gospel, I have to let them all in. No, I think you'd say, wait a minute, we got to think about this. And what would you think about? How many can our house handle? What would be the impact on our family? Can we sustain the addition of 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or more? Can we possibly help 100? You would have to do a sort of a cost-benefit evaluation. And the cost is likely to be extraordinarily high. You would evaluate that. You want to maintain the integrity and the health and the function of your family. And so you have walls, you have doors, you have keys. You limit who can come in and who cannot. Now, government is a servant of the family. Government is an extension of the family. Government must do the same thing. The government has to say, well, wait a minute, there are people knocking at our national door. How many can we let in? How many would be wise? How many can we sustain? And which ones can we allow in and why? And what will be healthy for our families, our people, our culture, our way of life? There are many, many, many needy people in the world, and it makes your heart drop when you just think about that. But there are. But we can't support the world. We can't let the whole world in. Our society would collapse. We'd all starve, and then we can't help anybody. So what do? Wisdom says you better think about how many and which ones. Furthermore, a little bit more on biblical political theory. Let's go to Romans chapter 13. What is government for? And Romans 13 tells us government is to protect citizens from harm, to punish the evildoer, and to reward those who are law-abiding. Government is to establish law and order because we need that. We're in a fallen world and there are lawless people. There are lawbreakers. And so immigration laws need to reflect that. Immigration laws need to protect citizens from harm, economic harm, cultural harm, physical harm, legal harm. What will it do to our citizens if we let this many people in? What will it do to our culture if we let that many and those kinds of people in? What will it do? Government has to consider all that. It calls for wisdom. So what have we seen? What am I supposed to do about the immigrant who moves in next door? the immigrant I run into at work, the immigrant I run into at the gym or at the store. Treat them, think about them, feel about them like they are, in fact, image bearers of the image of God. Love them. Treat them well. Don't fall into the ditch of animus toward, don't be like, well, those people. No, treat them well. What does the Bible tell us about national policy? Well, it tells us that there's a purpose for government. Government is to help families. Government is an extension of family. You don't need government unless you have too many families, and then the families need government to help them make it all work. But what does the Bible tell us about how many immigrants to let in? Nothing. So that falls to government, to economics, to history, to wisdom. Here's a great verse for that kind of wisdom that's needed. Matthew 10:16. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Some people want to be nothing but as innocent as doves. We're also supposed to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Now, if you want to stay, here's a bonus. A book. A careful database study of the recent mass immigration into Europe and its deleterious results by a brilliant man. I really like him. I've read his books. I listen to him a lot. His name is Douglas Murray, and this book is called The Strange Death of Europe. Read it and weep and pray for the gospel in Europe. So that's it. The Bible, on a personal level, tells you treat every immigrant in your land well. Love them. Government, on a national level, needs to wisely manage how many and which to allow in. It's been that way for all of human history. Thanks for listening.